the last couple of weeks I've been talking about just using the Bhagavad Gita as a setting for a conversation. I hope everybody's familiar with the Bhagavad Gita, and if you're not, you'll just have to bear with me. And if you're interested, that there's a text that I recommend, which is pretty old. I think it was translated in the late 60s by a Spanish Sanskritist named Juan Mascaro and published by Penguin Books. It's a tiny little book. It is the simplest and most free of propaganda translation that I've come across. In any case, in the Bhagavad Gita, one of the princes in North India has abandoned his princely place in order to clear the way for his very ambitious and aggressive cousins to take over the kingdom. And it's only when cousins are behaving badly that Arjuna and his brothers, who had left the palace, are sort of forced into the situation where they have to respond. And, really it's a metaphor. The Bhagavad Gita is a metaphor and a teaching about many topics, one of which is the struggle that we face every day. This enormous ambiguity that we get up to every morning that we call our day and our life. And, it's a discussion of the right understanding to have about that life and the right attitude that we need to move in it. For the possibility of really finding some peace and some happiness in our lives. And so, the two topics that I have suggested to you that are relevant here is, one is, we have no control. We have zero control. And this is something that personally I think about regularly, and it is a topic that I'm suggesting that you think about as deeply as you can yourselves. Because when we really look into ourselves and we look at our life, we have no control. And this isn't like, me pulling out some Hindu scripture to lay on you. If you want a contemporary discussion of this, the most prominent neurophysiological researcher in the United States today, David Eagleman, talks about the topic of free will in his book Incognito. We have so little control that every single day as we wake up to our day, our bodies are slipping through our metaphorical fingers. Our body is slipping away from us. And at some point it's going to completely slip away and turn into dust, and there's nothing you can do about it. Nothing. This body which you walk around in every day thinking of, either liking parts of it, not liking parts of it, all the complexity that you have in relationship to your body, it's going to completely slip away from you, and at the last moment you're going to realize it's not your body at all. You don't own it, you don't possess it. It has a whole program of its own that arose, out of life and subsides back into life completely on its own. And it pretty much does what it wants to do in the meantime. And you are along for the ride. The thing I want to talk to you tonight about is that earlier today, I was having a conversation with somebody, but this person was saying, there's so much I need to change about myself. I want to change this and I want to change that. And I said, forget it. It's not going to work. You know, I hear this all the time. I want to change this, I want to change that. It's like New Year's resolutions. Never happens. It's so interesting. We have so little control that there's lots we want to change and think we ought to change that we never get to change. Why is that? So, you know, and this is a lot like the whole discussion of religion, where religion wants to tell you how to behave. Nobody behaves like religion tells them to, especially the people who are pushing the behavioral program the strongest are the lamest about its expression. And, you know, that's why we don't think here among ourselves about blame or sin or fault or flaw or any such bullshit as that. And I mean it when I use the word bullshit. What we can do, apropos the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita, is we have the possibility to cultivate certain skills. We have the possibility to train our mind to some degree, to train our bodies to some degree, to cultivate certain skills to some degree. You know, and everybody is gifted with different possibilities for this kind of cultivation. The Taoists as a whole, you know, really focused on self-cultivation through martial arts and healing arts and, you know, inner energy work. And then, you know, that's not so different than what we do here, although we don't have a lot of martial arts going on. But there's a significant amount of healing arts happening here. And a lot of talents being developed. But those talents all have their limits. So using those talents that we cultivate, we bring ourselves to the circumstance where in the flow of those talents we are able to take in enough energy that we can grow. And you know, I say all the time, we're in this world to grow. I don't say we're in this world to change. I don't say sometimes I might say we're in this world to be a better person, but I don't mean that at all in the contemporary context of, you know, psychologically and socially you want to become what is judged by your fellow men to be a better person, whatever that is. Better person to me means someone who is more in contact with themselves, who is more established in a contact with themselves, able to feel themselves. And out of that, just simple ability to make contact with ourselves, a natural and ever-deepening alignment between our own essence and the field of experience that we move in is established, and a flow between inner and outer takes place. That is constantly a self-adjusting, self-balancing, reciprocal interchange that is changing, evolving, transforming us continuously, naturally. And in this circumstance in which contact, alignment, and flow is established, we don't become a better person exactly. We become who we are. And becoming who we are is a wonderful thing, because having yourself opened in every dimension, liberated from the intellectual, psychological contrivance that is culture. You are able to open your heart, feel yourself, feel your world, feel the people that populate your world, and be genuinely connected. The thing about genuinely connected is, automatically in that genuine, authentic connectedness, kindness and compassion arise. Automatically. I say from time to time, I'm okay with the 10 Commandments. My big complaint about the 10 Commandments is none of those fuckers who preach them actually practice it. How is this possible? We're a Christian nation based on the 10 Commandments, whose number one is thou shalt not kill, and we've spent $15 trillion killing the hell out of millions of people in the last 30 years. What's with that? But I'm okay with them. I wish they'd live by it, but okay. My real problem, if I have any problem with the 10 Commandments, it goes much deeper than just those 10, or was it 2 or 3 or 174, whatever, It goes much deeper than that. At the core of the 10 Commandments, there is judgment. And in my 47 years of practice in India, Tibet, Thailand, Indonesia, Hong Kong, Japan, Europe, and America, I have never, ever met the judge. There is no judge and there is no judgment. That is a contrivance. What there is open hearts who are capable of acknowledging the delicateness of the human circumstance. The fragility of beings which barely exist at all. And in an authentic connectedness, appreciating that sort of creative friction and holding the space of openness that friction can resolve itself. So I don't teach about, making changes and being better. I feel like when I say we're in this world to grow, we're in this world to grow because, first of all, we can. We are living beings unfolding from, a densely packed disappointment of our ancestors' seed into, in the right environment, an unbelievable flowering of unimaginable possibility that is expressed through the process of authentic connection, taking in energy, taking in experience as nourishment, and allowing ourselves the space to express whatever it is that, we are inspired to express. One of the things that, I think about that's unfortunate, and I think community is really important and the advantage of the evolutionary advantage of human beings. One of the things I think is really unfortunate about community is the judgment that inevitably happens in the people who live in community. Even though we say we're not about that, inevitably these judgments emerge. Of course, every day, every person is creating a shell around themselves, and it is from that shell that unconsciously we create judgments. It is with our spiritual practice that consciously we dissolve judgments by dissolving the shell and becoming contact, alignment, and flow. Every person on this earth, as Rudy used to say, the earth is the Bellevue of the solar system. Now, probably a lot of you don't know what Bellevue means. But Bellevue was the original hospital, public hospital in Manhattan. And through the 19th century, it was just this, horrible place where limbs got sawed off and people got poisoned. But in the 20th century, it turned into an insane asylum. Rudy used to think of the Earth as the Bellevue of the solar system. Everybody here is insane. Everybody. And the wonderful thing in our lives has been that we were able, for some reason, to acknowledge our insanity and imagine that there had to be a better way. And in imagining that better way and beginning to search, for myself, I can say honestly, when I started, I was searching for God. That was the language that I used. I found God, and that language evaporated. But that search, is a reaching for healing that happens as we are nourished and begin to grow. And the growth that happens within us is not a growth that we can actually ever control. It is a growth that happens from the autonomy of our own creative energy. And the experience of that growth and what it expresses, we would call a revelation. It's not something that we imagine, it's something that we see after the fact and understand. It was revealed to us. So rather than pounding yourself about what you're not, or how you're limited, or pounding yourselves over any of your problems, dedicate yourselves to growing. And in this growing, discover yourself. That self which is completely more extraordinary and unimaginable than any of the feedback you are ever going to get in any family or social context. Family and society exist to limit you, to define you in the most limited possible way. This is one of the messages of the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna is standing there, and it's not like he's facing this big army of his brothers and his cousins. That's what he's facing, his family. This is my own experience. Family is a short word for family. The initials that describe family is CF. Glad somebody got it. What you will find is that you are an extraordinary being composed of atoms that were made in stars trillions of miles from here. Held, mostly space, held together by, subtle energetic connections. We are this mass of energetic contacts. Do you know that one perception, like the perception of a clock, takes about 100 million neural interactions just to build up the perception of the clock, and then it moves to the point where then you have to re-perceive yourself, and that on and on. It's extraordinary. We are not a thing, we are a process, and all of the boundaries that we imagine that exist within ourselves are boundaries that are totally contrived. You're not a thing, you're a process, you are curtains of light. On every breath, you can feel that light energy rippling and expanding and gathering and expressing itself. On every breath, you can experience the tensions that are falling away and the authentic, rich, abundant, meaningful you coming ever more closely to the surface. And while you're doing that, could I just ask you one favor? And that is, as you are doing that, look around you to the people that you share your life with, and remember, they're at least as crazy as you are. And in that acknowledging, can't we give them the space and the respect to have their own process? Can we not even quietly to ourselves think of them as stupid or one thing or in whatever name we want to use? Can't we see them as, living beings composed of the same creative energy that we are, working to, dissolve whatever incredible baggage they were presented with by their parents and their parents' parents too, and in that space, can't we hope for quietly in our hearts their healing and their fulfillment, which will then make our own world richer? Every day we get up and face this battle. Every day, we have only our skills to cultivate, and no control over any outcome. Every day, let's move through this battle with as much, the same awareness that Arjuna is expressing to Krishna, that that Krishna is telling to Arjuna that, life itself has its own will. Our life has a will of its own, which we have no control over. And so the only thing that we can really do, besides cultivate our skill every day, is live a life of love for life itself and devotion to creative energy, which then embraces everybody we interact with, in the understanding that we are all struggling for some form of healing, which will allow the beauty inherent within us to shine out and express itself. Whew. Namaste, everybody.